How soon after your muscle activation technique session can you exercise? This is a question that a lot of people ask, and that's exactly what we are discussing on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
Today, we are answering the question of how soon after your muscle activation technique session can you start to exercise? A lot of clients ask this because they're wanting to work out. Their body is feeling better. They're feeling stronger, more mobile. They're like, all right, great. How soon can I start up again? That's what we want to talk with you about today. We want to let you know that if you want to start taking action on what we're discussing today, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com, click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. All right, so this is a very common question that many clients ask, especially early on when they are starting to notice, okay, yeah, that shoulder thing that I had going on, oh, that knee thing that I had going on, whatever it is that they're symptomatically they were experiencing, that is starting to subside. They're feeling stronger. They're feeling more connected with their body. They're like, yeah, I want to start exercising again, or I want to keep up with my exercise that I have been doing. How soon can I get back into it? And this is a really important question to ask, because if you screw up the timing of this, the whole thing can get screwed up. No. So the timing is actually really important. And it's important for a few different reasons that we're going to talk with you about, but there is a very specific answer that we want to give you to this question today.
That's right. So when we're doing, for those of you that don't know, when we're doing muscle activation techniques, we are resetting the nervous system. We're trying to get muscles that weren't really active back up to speed. And that's why people start feeling really great after their sessions. It's like this shoulder that was half supported is now more fully supported, or their spine that was not, half the muscles weren't working properly. Now they are working properly. And that's why they're like, wow, I can, go run a marathon now, or I'm really excited to go back to my workout, or it's just workout day. So, can I hit the gym? And so the big thing that we advise people is that you want to wait about 24 hours before you start challenging your body again, or especially challenging that area again. Like if we worked on your shoulder and you wanted to go, for a walk or something, that would be fine, or, an exercise walk or work legs or something like that. But we want to have low stimulus in the area that we have just worked on for about a day. Reason being is that we just got some fresh muscles working in this area, and we want your body to have time in a low stress environment to kind of reincorporate these muscles into your movement patterns or the way you move, however you want to say that. And so when you keep the load off for just a short period of time, for about 24 hours, we find that people's sessions results stick better. And so that's what we usually advise, is about a day, keeping it just normal daily activities in that area, and then going back to your routine after that day period.
That's exactly right. And Julie, you hit it on the head, is the stress is the big thing, the stress to the area. Because think about it like this. So when you have muscles that are inhibited, which is a thing that we are addressing with muscle activation techniques, a breakdown in communication between your brain and specific muscles. Your brain and your nervous system then have to figure out how to compensate around those muscles. And depending on how long those compensations have been going on for, they can be your body's default way of performing an activity, performing a movement, things like that. And so after we have activated the muscles with MAT, we've improved that communication between the brain and the muscles. It is going to take a little bit of time for your brain to start to trust that, okay, this can now become my default way of moving. I don't need to resort back to the compensations I was using. I can use these muscles that are now viable, that I'm now aware of. I can use them on a regular basis. The thing that will cause your body and your brain to say, oh, let me go back to my default ways, sooner rather than later, is when you ask your body to do a task that is too stressful for it, too stressful for its current level, to its current status. Okay, the more stressful an activity, the more stressful a task that you ask of it, the more likely it's going to be to default back to the compensations that it had before, because that's what it knows. That's what it feels comfortable with. It's not going to say, oh, this is a really stressful activity. Let me try using these muscles that, I just became aware of 7 hours ago. It's like, no. It's going to default to using all the muscles that is grown used to using. Okay. And so the longer you can give it, of kind of low stress where it doesn't need to go back to those compensations, the more likely it will be to default to using the muscles that it is supposed to use, that you want it to use when you're doing those activities. And that really is all based on the stress level. So yeah, like a 24-hour window is a really good time period if you're thinking, okay, well, I had my MAT session at 3 p.m. and I normally work out at like 7 a.m. Does that mean I need to skip my workout tomorrow? We have a couple options. One is you can just work out a different area of your body, right? So if like we worked through your shoulders, you can work out your legs, you can work out your core, something like that. You can work out and keep it lower stress. Or you can say, you know what, this is, I gave it one night of sleep, and make sure it's a good night of sleep. That's going to really help things settle in. And usually after that night of sleep, I'm not as concerned about it. And if you can get it to that 24-hour mark, that's really where we start to see, okay, things start to settle in a little bit better. But as long as you give it, like one solid night of sleep, then you're usually, okay, like I can go and use these, and you're at less of a risk of undoing things. What we don't want to see is like you have your MAT session at like 10 a.m. and they're like, okay, well, at 4 p.m. I'm going to go and do this workout. And it's like, no, that's too soon. You want to give it a little bit more time than that. I'd say the caveat to that is when we're working with clients who have a specific event or something that they're trying to perform for, okay? And it's like they are coming to us to get their body ready to perform in that event. They're not coming to us to get the work to last from one session to the next. They are saying, hey, tune me up before my event so I can perform at my highest level during that event. And then afterwards, we will take care of whatever comes up, before that. So you see this a lot with athletes. You see this a lot with, the athletes that we may work on, immediately before their competition. It's like, okay, I know that at the end of your game, you're probably going to have undone, like the work that we did probably won't last, in its entirety through your entire game. But you're entering your game in a lot better state than where you are right now, and you're going to have much better opportunity to perform at your highest level than you would if we didn't work before your game. And then after your game, we can, take care of whatever came up because of your game. And that's okay, because it's a different goal, it's a different outcome. But when people are like, oh, like I have this symptom, or I'm just wanting to generally like feel well throughout my life, I have, some different things I'm trying to get taken care of with MAT, that's where we really say, hey, like, give it that full night of sleep, or if you can, give it that 24-hour period before you really go and challenge the area. And that's when we see the work holds the best.
That's right, Charlie. You brought up so many points, and I was just about to say that. So, like, if you're an athlete and you're getting MAT right before your game, or let's say you're like at an event. Like I went to a couple different sporting events, like a dog agility show and a horse show, and worked on riders and handlers there. And that's just kind of the same conversation, but it kind of makes sense where it's like, I don't expect to, get treatment done or an MAT session done right before I perform and think it's going to be like this long lasting, life-changing thing. That is when you do that long-term work where you have someone in your area and you keep, returning to make the progress. But what I think it will paint the picture really, really well with trying to avoid high force scenarios, or like, working out scenarios right after your session, is that realizing that compensation is, most people think of it as something really bad, and it's when you move and it feels pretty bad or it doesn't feel right. Like that's what's in most people's head. But really, from a muscle perspective, compensation is when you're doing some action or motion or something related to your muscles, and there are some muscles helping that are doing an amazing job, and some muscles helping that are doing a really lousy job. And usually that leads to you not feeling that good when you're doing that motion, right? And so when we do muscle activation techniques, we are taking those lousy muscles and pushing them up to like closer to like those good muscles, right? And it might take a couple sessions, but in the meantime, right now you still have a divide. So compensation in our brains for muscle activation techniques is a divide. There's stellar muscles and there is not so stellar muscles. Let's work on the not so stellar muscles, right? And get them up to speed. And once we are improving them in an MAT session, which we always see improvements, we want to have time for those muscles to kind of settle in. If you jump into a high force scenario where you're like, wow, my glutes feel amazing. Thank you, Charlie, for working on my glutes. Now let me go squat 1,000 pounds. Well, yeah, the muscles that have already practiced, being amazing at squatting are like, yeah, we're here, we're ready. And those ones that are lagging behind, they're probably not completely up to speed yet. And even if they are, they just got there, an hour ago, right? And a lot of times that is when your body's like, yeah, you guys that have just woke up, like we're not going to be using you because this is a high force scenario. We'd rather see that our body gets through this in a safe-ish manner than for like our hips to give out, and then we're really injured, right? And so just that lower force, doing daily activities for the next, 24-ish hours, really helps to kind of let things settle in. We like to say settle in. And then your body's just more resilient as you approach a more high force scenario. Because again, remember, we have this divide and our body is going to want to like lean back on its previous, some people say like patterns or previous way of doing things. And we're trying to, with MAT, reteach your body like, hey, let's have more balance here. Let's have all the muscles participate. And so the more that we can let things chill for 24 and then get back to it and then return to an MAT session, kind of have that cycle, the more that we see people moving in the right direction in a very quick manner.
That's exactly right. So, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're strength training exercising. And we need to make sure that your body is ready for that. And that's really where the balance between MAT and your workouts comes in. The timing of each is really important. Some may consider best case scenario to do your workout and then go to your MAT session later that day, or use your MAT session as a recovery day on a day when you're not going to work out. Least optimal often is to do your MAT session and then workout later on that day, with the one caveat being if you are an athlete or you are going to perform in some kind of event and you're using MAT to prepare you to be able to perform your best during that event, and you're not worried about whether the work holds through the duration of the event. And so just kind of keep these things in mind as you're thinking about your own schedule and how you're structuring not only your workouts, but when you're timing your MAT sessions throughout your week. And again, if this is something that you would like our guidance with, it's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. So all you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedules, go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com. Click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We always appreciate your eyes on YouTube, your ears on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you consume our content. It always means the world to us if you leave us a rating and review. We truly appreciate you taking the time to give us that attention and give us that feedback. We are wishing you a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.